Hello there, and welcome to Mission 5, Lesson 12, where our student objective is to reason using benchmarks to compare two fractions on the number line. Okay, so we're going to be using a number line, and we're going to be using reason, meaning like common sense, to determine where a number is on the number line. So let's take a look together. Let us take a look, and here you notice we have three fractions. We have 1/8, 3/5, and 9/10. Now today what we're going to be asked to do is to place points like this on a number line, okay? And just using reason to do that. So what does that mean? Well, I'm going to start by drawing a number line here. So I'm going to, oh, that's not a very straight line. Let's try that again, because that was just horrible. And that's not much better, but we're going to go with it. Okay, so I'm going to start with 0 here. I'm going to end in 1. And then what should I put in the middle? Okay, what mark is that? That is 1/2. Okay, so notice these are the landmarks or benchmarks that I'm using here. 0, 1/2, and 1. All right, 0, 1/2, and 1. Those are our three major benchmarks that we're going to use to compare fractions and place fractions. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Well, let's take a look at 1/8, our first fraction. We want to place 1/8 approximately where it would go on this number line. Okay, so the first thing that you always need to ask yourself is, okay, is 1/8 more or less than 1/2? Because that's going to tell you right there, is it going to go on this side of the half or this side of the half? Is it less than half or more than half? Well, 1/8 I know is less than 1/2 because it would take 4/8 to equal 1/2. So I know it's going to be on this side right here. Okay. Now, where should I put it? Okay, and we're just going to use kind of reason, common sense. If I had 1/8, is 1/8 closer to 1/2 or is it closer to 0? So I'm asking myself, okay, is 1/8 just a little more than 0 or is it pretty close to 1/2? Is it going to be around in the middle? All that. I'm asking myself just those common sense questions. Well, I know 1/8 is just a little more than, for instance, 0/8. It's just one little piece more. And pieces in eighths are generally not that big. So I know it's not going to be close to 1/2. It's probably just going to be a little more than 0. So what I'm going to do there, I'm going to, let's get a color here. Let's use a marker for that. I'm going to mark a spot here. And I think that's going to be about 1/8. All right, I'm just kind of using that common sense. And again, if I knew this half was 4/8, I know I need to have a 1/8, a 2/8, a 3/8, a 4/8. Okay, so it doesn't have to be exact, but it should look in this case like it's a little more than 0. It's not close to 1/2. It's not next to 1 whole. Okay. Now let's do the same thing with 3/5. So even though it's a different denominator, so we're dealing in different units, we can still figure out approximately where to place it. So in this case, 3/5. Well, is 3/5 going to be more or less than 1/2? Is it going to go on this side of 1/2 or this side of 1/2? Well, 3/5 is more than 1/2. And I know this because what's half of 5? 2.5 is half of 5. And 3 is more than that. So I know it's going to be on this side of 1/2. It's more than 1/2. Now I need to ask myself, okay, is it a little more than 1/2 or is it a lot more than 1/2? Is it almost a whole other whole? Well, if I know 2.5 is half of 5, 3 is just a little more than 1/2. Okay, it's not almost to the next whole. It's just going to be a little more than 1/2. So I'm going to say probably right around here. It's more than 1/2. It's a little more than 1/2. Again, you're not going to be asked to be exact today, but you just need to get it on the right side of that half, get it on the right benchmark. Okay, so that's where I'm going to put 3/5. And then my last one is 9/10. Now, is 9/10, first of all, is more or less than 1/2? Well, it's more than 1/2 because half of 10 is 5. 5/10 is 1/2 in tenths. Now I'm going to ask myself, okay, so I know it's more than 1/2. So it's going to go somewhere on here. Well, is 9/10 pretty close to a half, or is it pretty close to another whole, or is it somewhere in the middle? Well, think of it like this. 9/10, what was going to be another whole in tenths? Another whole in tenths is going to be 10/10, right? So I know 9/10 is going to be just a little short of that. It's going to be tenths. The pieces are pretty small, and it's pretty close to 10/10. So I'm going to put it approximately right there, and 9/10, just like that. Okay. So what I'm doing with all these, I'm just kind of using common sense, comparing it to a half, comparing it to my benchmarks, which are 0, 1/2, and 1. Okay, so the first thing, always ask yourself, is it more or less than a half? And then, is it pretty close to 0? Is it pretty close to a half? Or is it pretty close to another whole? And then you can start placing them. And then when we place them, see, we can even compare these. We can say, well, I know that 1/8 is greater than 3/5, and 9/10 is greater than 3/5, right? Because the farther you go on the line, the larger the number, the greater the number. Okay, so today you're going to use that common sense. You're going to use the number line to place numbers using benchmarks as our guide.